All right. Very good evening to all our viewers. I hope I am audible to everyone. And I hope everyone is keeping themselves and their loved ones safe by taking all necessary precautions. Ironically, as this pandemic is getting prolonged and widespread, more people are seen letting their guards down in frustration or disbelief or something else. But that is very risky. And therefore, we urge you to follow all safety protocols at all times at home, work, and anywhere else. That said, I welcome all of you to our next episode of Master Speak. We have a very special guest for you today. She is known to be the world's foremost expert on today's mightiest market, women. Yes, you heard that right, but more about Marty in a bit. Let's first check in with all our viewers. Give us a thumbs up if you and your loved ones are safe and healthy. Tell us which city or town you are logged in from by posting the name of your city or the town in the comments box. Tag your colleagues, friends, and anyone you want today to join you for this session. Lastly, don't forget to post your questions. The two lucky questions will be rewarded, as always, with Amazon gift vouchers. But for that, you will have to stay till the end of the session. So keep your questions coming and stay with us till the end of the session. Now, if you want to see any of our recordings of the past sessions, I suggest you visit our website or any of our social channels and browse through all the previous sessions. Each session is equal to reading a 300-page book. So make good use of your time and browse through and see what interests you. Now, coming to our session for today, I am very excited to have Marti Barletta on our show. We have a very interesting session in which Marty is going to talk to us about how to boost sales with better marketing to the chief buyers for households and businesses. As a marketing professional, I can confirm that you're listening to the best there is on the subject. Now, Marty is a Wharton MBA who built her business consulting for Fortune 500 clients like Deloitte, Diageo, Ford, GE Appliances, Logitech, Pfizer, Volvo, amongst many others. She shows companies how to get more customers and make more money per customer using the simple yet powerful insights of her gender trends principles. As the go to authority on marketing and selling to women, Marty has been quoted on CBS, ABC, MSNBC, as well as the Wall Street Journal many times. A popular speaker internationally, she has spoken for hundreds of companies, conferences, and associations across dozens of industries and has enjoyed rave reviews on every continent except Antarctica. In fact, the renowned business guru Tom Peters, and you've heard him on our show a few weeks back, says Marty Barletta is one of the best presenters, male or female, I've ever seen. But that's a huge endorsement. Marty, thank you so much for joining us today. I am very excited to have you with us for a very interesting session that I'm really looking forward to. Thank you very much for joining us, and we are all ears for today's session. Marty, you have to unmute. We're now live.
There we go. All
Hi.
right. Hi, how are you?
Very good, Marty. So, yes, over to you. I hope I was audible all this while that I gave my introduction.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was just making sure that I had my correct screen on.
Yes, so we're all ready to go. Ashish, we can move to the session.
Okay, do I just start or does Ashish do something else or there he is. I can't hear you, Ashish.
Ashish, you're on mute.
There we go.
Sorry, I think being on mute is what this entire year is all about. Okay, sorry, my bad. Marty, whenever you want a presentation, just shout out my name and I'll put your presentation right away on the screen. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
And so as of now, I should get going on the presentation with the full screen because you can see my full screen. Is that where we are? Voila.
Yes. Yes.
Okie dokes. Okay. So looks like I have too much of the Chrome window here. Okay. All right, so winning with the world's big spenders, women. One of the things that I suspect that we're going to have as a question is, let's see here. First question, women, the big spenders? Because I notice a lot of times people assume that when we're talking about women spenders, that we're talking about women spending on themselves. And that is kind of an error, because when you think about earning power of Indian women, actually, one might conclude that they weren't the big spenders, because Indian women don't really earn that much compared to Indian men, because few work, because they're very traditional attitudes in India. And most of the occupations, not all, but most of the occupations that most Indian women work with are low pay with little autonomy. There are also very few single women households in India. But what's really important to marketers is not who earns the money, but who spends it. And that's what we're going to talk about in this presentation today. And it's not about what she spends on herself. It's about what she spends on those whose household she's in charge of. The woman everywhere, actually, not just the Indian woman, is the primary user and the primary decision maker in a couple of different arenas. One that everybody's pretty familiar with are the pantry items, or the daily needs that are bought every day for home maintenance, things like food and paper towels, detergent. Personal care for everybody in the house, whether it's skin care, hair care, analgesics, what goes in the medicine cabinet. Those things people already know that women buy the majority of small stuff that forms the household's inventory. But what they don't always realize is that women also are the primary users, and therefore the primary decision makers in terms of household appliances. Whether we're talking about small appliances that sit on the kitchen counter, like the toaster, a blender, or the microwave, or major appliances like refrigerator, freezer, dishwasher, vacuum, that sort of thing. And sometimes people think that, deciding whether or not we should buy one, that is often a joint decision, but deciding what brand we're going to buy is usually the decision of the primary user. And in all of these cases, which are for home maintenance, the woman is the primary user. So Indian women spend more than men, full stop. As a matter of fact, Boston Consulting Group did a study in India in 2019 and found that women have the final say in 54% of all household buying decisions. So that's the majority right there. And other areas that we don't always think of as buying decisions, but they are. So 51% of leisure travel plans. And I bet most people would be surprised to learn that women have the final say in buying 44% of bikes and scooters as well. Because people think of those as vehicles or more mechanical, associate them with cars, and assume that men have the primary final say in situations like that. But look at this summary of an Indian household budget. Women do the household buying on each of the categories that I've highlighted there. And when you look at the substantial percentage of the Indian household's budget that goes into each category, you can see how it really starts to add up. Food and drink, obviously, what we were just talking about. Goods and services are some of those other pantry items. And maybe doctor services, things like that. People who come to work on the electrician, the plumbers, those sort of things. Clothing, health, education, household equipment. By the time you put those categories I've highlighted together, you see that women have the primary spending say-so in 63% of the household expenditure. Now, obviously, it's no news to anybody on this call that India has experienced breakneck economic expansion in the past 15 years. It has slowed down a little bit more recently, even before COVID. But the main drivers of that incredible expansion have been this incredible growth of the middle class and the subsequent massive growth in consumption. Look here at the Boston Consulting Group. We're going to be focusing this presentation on the what the Boston Consulting Group would consider the middle class or the top classes. It's hard to say. We're right between 2016 and 2025, but in 2016, the middle class, as defined by BCG, was 23% of Indian households. In 2025, it's predicted to be 36%. So I'm guessing that right now we're probably somewhere around 30%. 30% of Indian households are considered to be the middle class. And when we look at the consumption that those households account for, we're looking at somewhere between 51% of total consumption spending in India and 65% of total consumption spending. So that is about, whoops, sorry, I've got a little something up here. That is about 60% of spending with 30% of households. So that is by far the opportunity for the companies that are marketing to consumers. And that's where we're going to concentrate our focus for this presentation. Consumption comprises 60% of the Indian economy. That's a big deal. It does in many, many large countries. And women's spending, as we just established, drives that consumption. So women's spending drives India's economic growth. That's really important in order to sustain that enormous success, economic success that the country has had. So what you learn in this presentation about helping the big spenders is key, in fact, to the pandemic recovery. Learning how to help these major buyers, big spenders, access the products and services that they want and do shopping very easily from wherever they are is what is going to drive that economic growth. During the recent past, we've seen in India the emergence of some new consumer trends. One of them has been heritage pride. Prior to these new trends, Indian women, Indians in general, were very interested in foreign products, but now they're starting to turn towards the wonderful richness of the culture in India, the regional cultures, the various area cultures, and prefer those types of products. Vocal for local means that buyers are supporting local merchants, and there has been a strong upsurge all across the world and in India too about sustainability and environmental responsibility. So Indian consumers are expressing a preference for products that help them experience or materialize that value. When we come to the area of how they buy, the main shopping trend is m-commerce or mobile commerce. And very recently, there have been a number of studies. In fact, this is changing so fast that it's hard to keep track of where the actual penetration of mobile phones is these days. But what we have seen, what the studies have shown, is accelerated growth, not just in metro and tier 1 markets, also in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And perhaps not surprisingly, the fastest growth has been in the rural parts of India. And then COVID changed everything. All of these new emerging trends that were on the upswing really have to be a little bit rethought and retailored because of some of the restrictions that COVID has placed on all of us. And so what this presentation will focus on is what COVID's impact has been on the women buyers of India and how the Indian businesses can help address some of those issues and help women liberate their buying power. So for consumers, COVID created, in particular, these 5 big changes. Number one, and we're going to talk about each of them, but income uncertainty, health anxiety, social contact restrictions, time overload, and emotional stress. And these 5 factors have really worked together to change the outlook of how Indian women have approached their shopping and their buying priorities, as well as change some of their brand preferences. As far as businesses are concerned, what businesses need to respond to is that the pandemic has changed what consumers want in a product and how consumers shop. And the 5 new conditions of COVID, if you will, are that number 1, there have been the income hit that has the income drops that many Indian households have suffered, as well as many households all around the world, has raised and put a greater importance on value or what you get for the money. Secondly, the new health concerns have created a shift in priorities and a different way that Indian consumers and consumers all around the world think about health. The social contact limits that we've seen have created barriers to interaction with the stores that women consumers are accustomed to buying from, and so have set them off to find new ways of buying and new ways to access the merchandise they're looking for. The increased time pressure has caused Indian women to find new ways to deal with their workload in the home, and has resulted in some shortcuts and some support systems that have changed how they function within the home and have provided some opportunities for Indian businesses to support them. And then finally, the acceleration of digital shopping, which was already growing amazingly rapidly, but has now accelerated, has created some rapid advances in the way businesses can reach out to Indian consumers. The sudden income drop in India has been experienced by 43% of households. That's kind of a precise number. In fact, I've seen numbers that range from 40% to 60%. And because in Indian households, men are the primary providers, this has taken a couple of different forms. In Indian companies, many of the companies have, in lieu of laying off workers, or have tried an alternate approach with some of their more salaried workers that have resulted in salary cuts. And these are usually amongst people who have the kinds of jobs that they can work from home. But other times, Indian men have suffered complete job loss. They have lost their job for which they're qualified and have been struggling gamely to find any kind of work. It has been very frustrating, of course, to have to take lower paying work than they're qualified for. So that creates some stress in the household right there, because the man of the house, being the primary provider, is very worried about his ability to take care of his family. Prior to COVID, women's primary responsibilities, not surprisingly, but you could divide them up into 3 general areas: home maintenance, parenting, and shopping. And when I talk about shopping, I'm not talking about the fun kind. A lot of people, when you say women in shopping in the same sentence, think we're talking about, ooh, let's go buy some new shoes, or let's go get something fun to wear, some new jewelry. That's not what we're talking about in this presentation. When we're talking about shopping, we're talking about the kind that needs to be done so that the family can function. And in my book, Marketing to Women, I call women the chief purchasing officer for the household, because women really see household shopping as a skill set. They do all of the buying all of the time, and they know that the more experience they have with different shopping venues, with different merchants, it takes experience to know how to find the products you're looking for and how to assess which ones are better than others. And the more experience you have, the more market awareness you have, which is important because, as you'll see shortly, women like to have a view of the full range of what's available in the market before they make a decision. And consequently, as a result of this experience and market awareness, women find that they come up with tips and tricks for how they go about locating what they want to buy. And that makes them really experts, and they pride themselves on this. Just as men pride themselves on their jobs that they're paid for, women pride themselves on their expertise in securing what the household needs in the best in the best way for the best price at the right time. So we were going to talk about the greater importance of value. And that's, of course, because when you have less income, or when you're worried about having less income, it becomes very important that you spend your money carefully. And let's stop for a moment and consider the difference between value and price, because that's very much in operation here. Price, normally consumers are really focused on value, and they recognize the trade-off that they recognize that they're not always looking for the lowest price. Sometimes you want to pay a little bit more to get a little bit more. But in these days of income uncertainty, price is very important. Every little bit counts. Indian women consumers have always been very, especially since the onset of online shopping, discounts have been very important for women consumers, partly because of this rapid emergence of the middle class. People are encountering new opportunities to spend. And one of the easiest ways to get experience spending wisely is by looking at price, finding the best discounts. And discounts are, in fact, a key factor driving mobile commerce. But value is about getting more for the money. And what the way women, or the way shoppers see it, and women shoppers we're talking about in particular, it's not about being cheap. It's about being smart. And as I said, women view shopping as a skill set. Women have a shopping style that is different from men. And throughout this presentation, I'm going to talk about some of the ways that women are different from men, because that will enable me to highlight various areas where that comes into play. As smart shoppers, women search and compare more than men. And I'll tell you a little bit about what I mean by that. But first, I want to highlight that this is part of a major macro difference between men's and women's outlook and behavior styles. Some people ask me, hey, Marty, do you think men and women are really that different? And yes, I do think so. Scientific American, in fact, themselves think so. It's a function of different brain structures, different brain composition, actually, hormones. It's not all cultural or socialization by any means. When I started studying this area, I was actually pretty surprised by the big differences that there are in a lot that's hardwired into the physical differences between men and women. But before I get too carried away with that, let me use a little analogy. Because sometimes I say, people say, well, men and women are more alike than they are different. Yeah, but think about this. Mice and human beings share 95% identical DNA. 95% identical. Isn't that amazing? But it's that last 5% that accounts for a huge amount of difference, isn't it? I mean, the size, the fur, the tail, let alone the brain power. So even if men and women are 95% the same and only 5% different, as a matter of fact, as it happens, a lot of that 5% difference lives right where buying decisions happen. So one of the ways that men and women are different in a macro sense is their outlook and the way they prefer to approach, the way they prefer to look at things. Men prefer to be focused. All right. They like to look at things one at a time. Let's look at this. Let's stay focused on what's important. And that's, let's do issue 1 and then issue 2 and then issue 3. And so they tend to be focused one thing at a time, and they address topics sequentially. Women are quite different. Women tend to prefer to have a more comprehensive outlook. And by the way, I use generalized terms like men and women are different. Obviously, this varies enormously by individual, but on average, you can definitely say these differences exist. So women on average prefer to be more comprehensive, which means they prefer to look at things more in context. They prefer to look at how things interact with each other. They prefer to look at how things go together. And if that means that they're looking at one variable at the same time as they're looking at three other variables, they will very often integrate the topics that they're considering and look at them sort of in parallel process. It leads to different shopping styles. And as this little illustration shows, it's just a difference in perspective, but boy, it can make either side very puzzling to the other sometimes. And I think that a lot of times, if you don't recognize that men and women are different, people tend to be a little judgy about how people are different from them. People tend to think, well, the way I do things is the right thing. So if people don't do things, it's the right way. And if people don't do things the way I do them, that doesn't make any sense because I'm a smart person and I do things, the way that makes sense. So if men are thinking the way I do things is the right way, they might not always understand the way women do things. They might think, oh, women don't know how to do that. When in fact, what's going on is women choose to do things differently because they have a different style of looking at the world, of resolving, of understanding the world, and of operating in the world. So in shopping styles, men tend to be more focused. What they do is they decide, what are the most important criteria? What are the 2 or 3 things that really matter to me here? Then they'll go out and locate the top option with those 2 or 3 things. Women look at it kind of in reverse, sort of like the 6 and 9 illustration in the cartoon. Women, when they're approaching a shopping decision, especially something that they haven't shopped in a while, like maybe buying a new dishwasher or refrigerator, what they assume is that there's new stuff out there. And so they go out more in an exploratory mode. They want to look at the whole range of options to see what's available. And then they'll look at every various detail of the options that are available. And they will balance all the different criteria to come up with what seems to them the best value package. All right. What is it that gets them the most of the things that are the most important to them? So I use an example of a hotel sometimes. I remember we were supposed to book a business trip out to New York back when I was in corporate. And when we were making the trip to New York, and when a man is booking a hotel trip or a hotel stay, he thinks, well, let's see, what's important to me? It has to be in Midtown Manhattan, and it has to cost about, I don't know, $400 a night. And there's a lot of hotels in Midtown Manhattan that cost about $400 a night. He gets online, he finds one that looks pretty good, and he books it. That's good. It's efficient. He's addressed the first topic on his agenda. Sold, done, move on to agenda item number 2. But women will almost never book the first hotel that they look at, because women will find a range of hotels in Midtown Manhattan at $400 a night, and then start to look at other bases on which to choose which one to stay in. So maybe one has an executive women's floor. Maybe one has a free cocktail hour every evening. Maybe one has parking in the building. There are all kinds of other considerations that have nothing to do with the quality of the hotel stay itself, but which women like to take into consideration before they choose the hotel that they want to stay at. Now, what this amounts to is that basically women have a longer list than men. They care about the same most important criteria. People say to me, hey, do women want something different from men? And I say, no, they want the same things as men and more. So they care about the most important criteria and also about the secondary features that men tend to consider sort of irrelevant. Let's not waste time trying to figure out who has the parking garage. And by the way, I did say in the program description that I would talk about why marketing to women doesn't alienate men, because I got that question quite a lot. People anticipated that women wanted something different from men. And if you started marketing to women, then whatever you were saying in your messaging wouldn't appeal to men. And it's not true at all. In fact, almost the opposite is true. There has been research done by companies in multiple categories. Audi is one. I think it's Hyatt is the hotel, American Airlines. They've done research to test this idea of, does marketing to women turn off men? And first, let me quickly say that this assumes that we're not doing pink marketing. And for the most part, very often, women don't respond to pink marketing any better than men do. They don't like being sort of pushed into a women's corner because they want the same things as men. But in order to be careful shoppers, in order to be smart about their decisions, they want more. And so consequently, if you meet the higher expectations of women, you generally exceed the expectations of men. And that's what the research showed that all of these different companies did, is that when they did a good job marketing to women, they generally found higher satisfaction amongst their male customers as well. So this secondary features interest is really good news for marketers, as a matter of fact. It's good news that your primary shoppers feel this way, because when you think about it, the price of entry for any category, whether it's cars, dishwashers, pots and pans, bikes, scooters, anything, basically everything in the category has the same primary features, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the category. That's what makes them the product that is in that category. That's what makes them a bike. That's what makes that instead of a car, But what makes within the category, what makes the specific brands different from each other is the secondary features. So we have in our household a particular. I buy sausages, turkey sausages for people for the family, or for my husband these days. The kids have their own households. I buy turkey sausages, and my preference is to buy one particular brand because it comes with each individual sausage wrapped, and it's perforated, so you can tear off the sausage in the plastic wrap and put it in the microwave to steam in the microwave in the package, instead of having to pull a sausage out of the plastic wrap, which is sort of messy and drippy, and then put it on a plate and put it in the microwave. So I buy only that brand of sausages because it tastes as good as any other brand of turkey sausage. And it has this secondary feature that I care about a lot. And actually, so does my husband. He, if I want him to be microwaving his own sausages, then, I want to make it as easy and convenient for him as well as for myself. So this good news for marketers is based on the fact that secondary features matter to women. When you're doing your advertising, talking about, guess what? My hotel has a parking garage in the basement, or we have happy hour. Men are like, yeah, whatever. But women are like, oh, that sounds really good. And so the marketers' basis for their point of difference versus their competitive brands really matters to women. And this is contrary to the popular wisdom, which says, I was trained in advertising, and it says, focus on the most important things and don't distract with the secondary features. because that just muddies the waters and that just compromises the communication. Well, we have to, of course, be we have to be sensible about how much information we try to cram into how much media. But if you have the media that permits it, the more information you have about secondary features, women will actually read it, look at it, consider it, and will probably make their choice based on the features that are specific to your brand. So don't leave those off. Be sure that you're helping women with her longer list. When we come to online shopping really facilitates her shopping style, because when you're online, you can get more detailed product information at the click of a button, right? And you get a whole world of product selection available to you versus what you can find on shelf in any single store. So what's kind of, again, counterintuitive here, but it's really important to understand, because women are your big spenders and your primary shoppers, is that marketers would do well to dare to compare, as I call it. And dare to compare, because I guarantee you that she will compare. All right. She will look at the range of options. She will look at your competitors as well as you before she makes a decision. And so if you help her with that, that is to your advantage. The types of comparison utilities that I'm talking about, a lot of us have seen those, compare products capabilities, where you can check the 4 products and then the website or the app will bring all 4 products together and you can see the key features of them side by side. Another comparison utility that women use a lot is shopping lists. For example, on Amazon, you can put things on a list, and this is how I routinely shop. I'll look at whatever I'm buying and put all 18 options that I'm considering on a list, and then I'll have them all in front of me at once with at-a-glance capabilities to look at, all right, here are the ratings and here are the prices, and I go through and I throw out the ones that aren't really rising to the top of the list, and then I do the careful consideration within the 4 or 5 that have the best combination. And then another utility that helps with comparisons are price and availability alerts. If online merchants want to keep women looking at their sites and their apps, they need to be offering these dare to compare, and not just the merchants. In fact, if you are a brand of automobile, for example, if you're a brand of automobile, let me see if I can mute this. If you're a brand of automobile, it would behoove you to think ahead about what kinds of questions would come up in reference to your competition, and be able to address those questions on your own site. What you're trying to do is you're trying to keep her on your site or your app if she's on a mobile phone. And you want to use the opportunity to control the comparison, because if she's comparing it using your utilities, you can address what some people might perceive as a disadvantage. So is your product a lower quality than the competition? Be sure that you flag that it's more affordable. Is it, on the contrary, more expensive? Be sure that you highlight all the additional features she gets. Does it have fewer features? Be sure to talk about how that makes it easier to use. So daring to compare with the competition is actually a very smart strategy when you're thinking about the way women shop. Okay, the second big COVID factor is health concerns. And men and women all over the world are getting very serious about health. COVID has caused all of us to reframe our health priorities. So whereas until COVID hit, we tended to think of adult health in terms of vitality and longevity and addressing, fitness to keep us agile longer. Now our priorities in terms of health are thought of in terms of safety and protection. And those are the primary concerns when women are looking at health issues these days. From a business response point of view, I'm sure many people have already addressed this, but you want to adjust your product selection and the kinds of information that you're providing. Even things that aren't directly related to COVID, things that aren't masks, things that aren't gloves, tend to have different, some of them have varying applications in the realm of safety and protection. And that's the primary area of concern these days. So you want to be sure to adapt your message focus to include those concerns. Secondly, here's a key area as well when marketing to women in general. Women are always the health gatekeepers for the family. And one of the consequences of this more complex, involved shopping decision style is that it takes longer. Remember, I was talking about going forward in parallel. It takes longer, and so it sometimes can be frustrating to sellers, to merchants, because women don't quite want to make up their mind right now on this site, on this app, because maybe I should look at some other options, or maybe I should postpone that until I've thought about it some more. There's a principle that in my book I call we, not me, that really applies here. And that is that women will very often take action more quickly when she is thinking of how it affects those that she's responsible for, as opposed to how it affects herself. So, for example, she can postpone a decision on buying a new painkiller medicine if her back is hurting. But if you remind her that such and this purchase, this health purchase, is something that her kids need, that is very likely to cause her to take a decision more quickly. And so this, in marketing, very often we're coached to think about what's in it for the buyer. And with women, it doesn't really work that way, because she will take faster action on what's in it, not for her, but for those she's responsible for. The third area that COVID has delivered some big changes in is the social contact limits that we are all enduring. And what it has done is create barriers to interaction, which affect women's shopping behaviors and, relatedly, how they can interact with their friends. So when it comes to shopping, one of the things we've all experienced is it's more difficult to communicate with a mask on. You have to be 6 feet away. With the mask over your mouth, it's hard to hear. But something that men may not consider is that you can't see the person's face that you're talking with. And with women, this is a real hardship, actually, because women read a lot more from faces than men do. That's why usually when you'll see women talking to other women, also to men, they will usually be looking right straight at each other's faces, because they get a lot of information from the expressions, from their eyes, from their mouths. And although you can see their eyes, you can't see their whole face. And so this really limits women's ability to get at the nuances of the communications with the other person that she's so used to having access to. This kind of mutes a key communication channel for her, and it affects her feeling of rapport, the reactions that she has to people. Maybe it affects her comfort level or confidence in negotiations. It really is a difference from between women and men. And so there are a couple of things that retailers and service providers could do about that. One is these transparent masks. Actually, I hadn't been aware of them before I started doing research for this presentation. But there are, one of the things merchants could do is they could get these transparent masks for their employees so that women could look at the people, their customers, women customers could look at the people that they're talking with in store and be able to see their whole face. These transparent masks are washable, reusable, cleanable. So this would be the type of investment that, number one, would be very noticeable to women, and you would get a lot of credit for, because she would really appreciate that a lot. Another thing you might consider would be to use these as a sort of bonus offer, or a way to attract traffic, or a gift with purchase for your customers, because I think women customers would love to have these. And if they can only get them from your store, or they can only get them from your company, what a way to differentiate yourself. And not only that, but to create word of mouth about something very unique. And women would pass that along amongst themselves very quickly. We all know that word of mouth is the most powerful marketing there is. And this is just the kind of opportunity that would really create a lot of word of mouth amongst women. Another way to do the same thing is to use more live video, whether you're in store or online. We've already seen the interactive kiosks that hotels have in their lobbies, that banks have, their ATMs, for example. But what if, instead of having them be sort of type and touch interactive kiosks, they were live video? Because then she can see the person's face that she's talking to. It gives her much more of a sense of connection with the company. It gives her a much higher level of communication and a greater sense of confidence in her understanding of what the company has to offer. Now, I think this one on the right is pretty funny. Here's a live video screen that they're interacting with the customer, but the other person still has their mask on, which sort of defeats the purpose. The fourth area where women and men are very different is an increased time pressure. And most women, their job is being at home to take care of what needs to be done at home. She already had a full-time job before COVID hit. Now she has at least 2 full-time jobs, maybe 3. And that's if she's not working outside the home. So things have gotten very hectic for women in India these days. One of the issues is that generally women's workload is more or less invisible to men. So if you look at this chart, the responsibility for the household chores, for food preparation, for shopping for daily needs, these are all much more in the bailiwick of women than they are in the bailiwick of men. The problem for women is that men generally just don't know how it all happens. The home is magically clean. Little elves stock the pantry shelves. The food preparation is done in the evening or in the morning on time. When you're hungry, there is food ready to eat. And I'm being a little facetious, of course, but in general, men don't give a lot of thought to how some of these miracles happen. Women's work before COVID, you can I broke it out just to spell it out a little bit more specifically. There's a lot that goes into each and every one of these areas. You talk about shopping, you're talking about pantry, home furnishings, kids' needs, their clothes, their school supplies. There is a lot of shopping. We saw that it's 30% of the household budget, right? Household chores, good heavens. In addition, food prep. It's not magical. There is, in addition to the shopping that you did for the ingredients, you have to chop it, you have to do the dishes after the meal. You have to clean up the whole kitchen and all the pots and pans. There's cleaning the whole rest of the house. There's all the laundry that has to be done. All of these chores have to be done day in and day out. Parenting, a big area in and of itself. And men are around to see what happens in the mornings and in the afternoons if they're working outside of the home. But all day long, if there are young children in the house, women are doing basic dressing, bathing, bedtime tasks. They're doing nurturing. This is demanding work, to tell you the truth. Listening, helping, behavior management, conflict resolution, teaching children how to behave, resolving issues amongst siblings. And then when they come home from school, helping them with the homework, doing the school projects that need to be done, volunteering to help the school, which is free labor for the school. And then lastly, the kids' appointments and transportation. Talk about a monkey on her back. There are those kinds of appointments that are frequent, those after-school activities like music lessons, sports, rehearsals that have to be done several times a week. And then there are the more periodic appointments that she has to set up and she has to take them to, and she has to wait for them, and she has to bring them back, like doctors, dentists, and haircuts. So all of this is woman's work that has gone on before COVID. But now, post-COVID, things have changed in a big way, actually. The kids and her husband, if he has unfortunately lost his job, if he's working at home, working from home, he's at home all day. Everybody's at home all day. And that means that more meals need to be prepared because they're not eating off-site at school or at work. More cleaning because everybody doesn't pick up after themselves. More interruptions if she's trying to get anything done, and more conflicts that need to be resolved. I think this little cartoon captures it well. That moment you realize that being a stay-at-home mom means you never leave work. So on top of that, in many areas, in many local areas, in many in many parts of the world, now she gets to add homeschooling to that. Think about it. It frightens me to think about it. I don't have young kids, and I'm grateful because I don't know how I would be able to suddenly pick up teaching maths, language skills, science that I haven't thought about for 50 years, and all of those things are taught very differently from the way I learned them. And suddenly she has to be an expert teacher. That creates all of those things, actually, laying that on top of, the husband and kids at home all day, at home schooling, second job, third job. Just consider the overwhelming time stress that has created for women in India, women in the family. And so consequently, how does she deal with that? Well, she has some shortcuts that she has to use. She pays more for convenience. And sometimes she just has to sacrifice standards because she can't get it all done the way she used to if she has that much more to do. So when we're talking about shortcuts in the area of food, there are lots of options. Sometimes you go all the way to ready to eat. You can order in, heat and eat, single self-serve. But of course, that's the most expensive way to go, isn't it? So you pay more to have somebody else do all the work and deliver it to the home. Okay, well, a slightly less expensive option. What about ready to cook? We can buy jarred sauces instead of cooking them ourselves from scratch. We can buy frozen vegetables that are cleaned and chopped and just put them into the casseroles and the dishes without having to do all of that extra work ourselves. And sometimes you can just buy the ingredients in a different form. I call this dishless packaging in a way. The Bird's Eye products, you can buy microwave in the bag products. You don't even have to take out, dump them into a bag, put in the 2 tablespoons of water. You just take out the plastic bag that can vent, put it in the microwave. or maybe a fold down snack bowl. I'll show you one of those in a moment. The fewer dishes you have to do with all of those people around, those dishes really add up. So this is a big deal. Whereas before, she might have been able to cope with all of the dishes and chopping and cooking. Now she has to find shortcuts, and that means that she has to pay more for them along this spectrum of choices. Here's that fold down bowl I was talking about. It's a design concept for an updated Pringles can that accordions out into a chip bowl. Magic, right? You don't have to get another dish dirty. And this is one of the other types of shortcuts that women are using, disposable products. So the paper plates, cups, flatware, that reduces the amount of dishes that have to be put into the dishwasher, taken out, put back into the cupboards. By the time you have that many people home all the time, that can be, a couple times a day. Similarly, disposable cleaning tools, Swiffer mops and dusters. Instead of having to clean the cleaning tools, you can just take it off the mop head and toss it. Counter cleaning wipes instead of sprays and wiping cloths. Disposable products make it easier, but there's always a trade-off in terms of how she gets the cooking done. Time-saving appliances. Instant pots have been huge in the United States, and I believe they and their competitive set are also being rapidly adopted all over the world because they save so much time. You set it and forget it. You can put the food in there and have it done in a much shorter time than if you were cooking it in several dishes on top of the stove. So the point here is that convenience, which used to be about making life easier, it was sort of one of the benefits of prosperity. Now it's much higher on women's priority list. Now it is a time-saving essential. And this actually, ironically, is an additional sort of stress for women. She's kind of conflicted because all of these shortcuts involve trade-offs. Here she is spending more when she wants to spend less. When you're tight on money, you don't want to spend more, but how are you going to get breakfast, lunch, and dinner on the table if you don't have some shortcuts? She has to sacrifice standards. Hey, she's renowned for her fantastic sauces, but these days she pours sauces out of a jar because they still taste really good and they take so much less time to put together. She even has to compromise some values that she cares deeply about, like sustainability. Research has shown Indian women, like women and men all over the world, are trying to be more responsible with how we use energy, with how we use raw materials. But you got to do what you got to do. So these shortcuts aren't all happy days for women. Sacrificing the standards also gets noticed by the family. And my point here is sometimes people to whom women's workload is invisible might not realize how frustrating or disappointing it can be if people start complaining about, things aren't as good. This jarred sauce isn't as good as the one that you make, Mom. This dinner isn't ready. As the house isn't cleaned fast enough. It's just taking too long. And this can lead to some frustrating dynamics in the relationship between husband and wife. And nobody wants that mug, world's okayest mom, right? We're looking for world's best mom, but kids can be disappointed. And unless people are more sensitive to women's needs, that can create problems and add to stress. So from a business point of view, finding ways to help her save time in store and online is critical. And what's really different here is to be sensitive and change the tone about convenience from self-indulgent, you deserve it, isn't life great, this is fantastic, new innovations, to self-care. Take care of yourself. This is to help you help everybody in the family. I'll start on this one. Okay. All right. The family dynamic in the household is what is creating the future citizens of India. It is really important for the home to be as welcoming and warm as it always has been. And sometimes, as I say, because men are under stress of their own, and because women's work is relatively invisible, that her contribution to the family and the way she takes it upon herself to be the family nurturer can get overlooked. So some of the three ways that men can help the most in helping her keep the family, oh goodness, in helping her keep the family is to actually help with some of the workload, to listen, because one of her big coping mechanisms, which is not the way men cope at all, when men are under stress, they prefer to be alone, they keep it to themselves. When women are under stress, they want to tell somebody about it, they want to vent, as we call it. And the most important thing is that when women are venting, men see it as when somebody has problems that they're talking about. His natural response is to help by suggesting solutions. You know what you should do, honey? You know what you should do? Why didn't you try this? Maybe you could do that. That's not the way to go to preserve family dynamic. The way to go is more empathetic, saying, I hear you. Wow, that must have been tough. Geez, you really handled that well. Right? That is another way to help. And the third way is appreciation. And just to be explicit, because you know what? No matter how hard you work for somebody else, and remember, she's not working just for taking care of herself. She's working to take care of everybody in the home. When you're doing a lot of work for somebody else, as long as they appreciate it, it doesn't matter. You're happy to do it. But if people forget to express their appreciation, that can create some problems. The Indian woman of today is strong, stressed, and the backbone of the Indian economy. And as we saw, consumer spending, which is the majority of the Indian economy, is key to the economic recovery from the pandemic. So Indian women and their state of mind is key to the economic recovery. Businesses, the more you can help her, the more she will boost your sales. Husbands, the more you can help her, the more nurturing the family environment will remain. We have a saying in the US, happy wife, happy life. Never were truer words spoken. So I wish you all happy wives and happy lives in India, and I thank you for listening. Oops. Oh my goodness, now what's happened? There we go.
Thank you so much, Marti.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I think the last statement resonates most with me. The one that we saw on the slide in the end. Happy wife, happy life. I think that's a mantra that I live by, and a lot of our audience who are married would definitely agree with you and with me on that one. Thank you, Marti, once again. It was a great session.
There you go, Rakesh. There's a lot we all can do to help.
Absolutely, Marti. These times have sort of brought about the best in the men, if I can say, at home as well. So it's always a great learning and great session that, Marti.
Very insightful. I was sharing with our audience. Extremely insightful, data driven, and indeed very, very interesting. So, key takeaways: are women different from men? Yes. Do they behave differently when they're buying? Yes. And if they are different, should we be marketing to them in a different way? Yes. So, so that's a great session, Marty. I think a lot of nuances that we picked. Now, I've got a bunch of questions here. I'm going to possibly pick two or three given the time constraint that we have. But I
Mhm.
have the first question, and I couldn't resist asking that to you, Marty. And one of the key topics that you sort of talk on extensively is marketing financial services to women. And that was conspicuous by its absence in your session. So let me start with asking you that why, when it comes to matters of investment and finance, we don't see similar participation or enthusiasm from women. And this we see across all segments, not just with homemakers. So, what's your take on that, and how should marketeers approach this topic with women when it comes to finance and investments?
Well, financial services as a whole category is changing so rapidly that actually, I think this is about to change. I think women are about to get more involved in financial services. And the reason that women have not gotten as involved in investment, there's a few reasons. First of all, women were not raised, and I think this might be particularly true in India, but we didn't get the same sort of conversations with our parents, fathers usually, who handled the investments about money. Now, about money, about investments, savings, debt, credit, insurance, borrowing, long-term care, life insurance, all of those things. Those were not topics that were generally discussed with daughters. They tended to be more discussed with sons. And so women grew up assuming that somebody else was going to handle that. I also, honestly, I think there is another reason. I have never seen research on this, but my understanding of men and women tells me this. For men, investments is fun. Okay. It's like a game. There's a score. You can beat other guys at it. You can be more successful at it. Men kind of enjoy investing because there's all these competitive aspects to it. They got a hot tip. They found out before somebody else. They went up more than the market. And given women's workload already for the family, frankly, I think women have felt if he's willing to handle that part of it, more power to him. Okay. I'm sure he'll do a good job. If there are any big decisions, he'll discuss them with me, but I don't need to be involved on an ongoing basis. He'll use his judgment if there's any big changes that need to be made and that he wants to discuss with me. Now, however, what's happening in financial services is that investment or asset allocation has become almost a commodity. And in the sense that it's been proven definitively, you cannot beat the market on a long-term basis, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. It is not going to beat the market on all of those different terms, although it'll be up on some occasions and down on others. So consumers of financial services have become more comfortable with things like exchange traded funds, which are indexed to a basket in the marketplace. And this is very well aligned with the way women like to perceive investments. They like to do their research up front. They're not trying to beat the market. They just want to the satisfaction and confidence of knowing that they're doing well enough to achieve the goals that they have for themselves and for their families. With the move towards also comprehensive planning, which means that, investments, you can get investment asset allocations online for free from a lot of different places now. You don't really need to have a whole lot of involvement in it. There's a lot of resources available that didn't used to be available. And so now financial advisors are broadening their offerings. So it's like, yeah, we do investments and we do insurance and we do financial planning and we do debt, credit, etc. Now this is the comprehensive financial planning, instead of just focusing on investments, is the way women like to look at things anyway, because investments is really a fairly discrete part of financial life. There's so much more. Who cares how well your investments are doing if you don't have the insurance that you need to take care of yourself if you get sick, to take care of yourself, to take care of your parents if they need long-term care, right? So women don't like to look at investments by themselves. They would prefer to look at comprehensive planning. However, comprehensive planning, I have a feeling that men are going to see this not as fun, not as a game anymore, but as admin. So I think men are going to be withdrawing from their enthusiasm. Some men, I mean, I think most men actually. Some men will always remain enthused about it, but I think a lot of men will withdraw from their enthusiasm for investment once it's lost its game-like characteristics, and they will see comprehensive financial planning with all of its complexity and integration as being more of a admin, more of a chore. Whereas women will see it as being, wow, now I finally have what I want, the ability to get a complete integrated picture of our household's finances altogether. So I expect that, combined with the immense surge of education amongst girls and women all over the world, that there will be much more involvement of women in financial planning beginning now.
Very interesting, Marti. That's something that resonates well with me as well. The next question, Marti, is from Raman, and this is about while designing a product per se, which will be used by men and women both. Does it make sense to have different designs, or does it make more sense to have gender neutral design? If that's an advice you were to give to a marketer.
It usually will depend on the product. So if you have a vitamin supplement, there are different biological needs amongst women's biology and men's biology, I suppose. But in a broad sense, no, I do not think it makes sense to have different products for men and women. In fact, because more often than not, it backfires. For example, and the reason for that is that women have become very suspicious of products that are for women, because up until now, products that are for women have generally been inferior products, or more expensive, or both. So in some of my other presentations, I show a clip off of Amazon. It has a bicycle, and it's the exact same bicycle, but it has one bicycle. It's available in one form, which is painted red and blue and white or something. The other one's painted pink. The one that's in the primary colors costs $45. It's a little toddler size bike. The one that's in pink costs $49. Why? Now, I suspect that what happened is the manufacturer said, oh, we have had to add an extra paint line in order to offer this product, and we're going to charge all of the costs to the girl's bike. And I suspect there must be some sort of manufacturing dynamic that happens. But over and over again, women have seen that products for women and girls are inferior. Secondly, it's insulting. There was so much mockery when the Bic ballpoint pen company offered, about 10 years ago even, Bic for women. And it came in pink and purple, and it was a little bit smaller, to fit women's hands. And there was nothing but mockery online. You should have read some of the Amazon reviews. They were hilarious, absolutely hilarious. So women very often, in the 1980s, when women were in the United States starting to work outside the home a lot more, And banks decided, good, we're going to show women that we're responding to their having income and their own bank accounts, and wow, a credit card in their own name. Do you know, Rakesh, the first time I applied for a mortgage when I was single, I couldn't get one because I didn't have a husband to co-sign with me. My father was in the Foreign Service, so he was overseas. So, I mean, this is in my lifetime still. But I think that that generally speaking, that's right. The banks, the banks opened up, and they were banks for women, and they had lovely magenta carpeting, and they had all flowers around, and nice decor, etc., and furnishings. And women were insulted because it's like, what do you think that's what we're about? Do you think that we think you're a good bank because you're pretty? No. What we mean when we say we want bankers to take us seriously is we want to have our questions answered, even if you don't think they're important, even if they're, they would get answers. They would ask a question about, a criterion that was perhaps a secondary feature of a financial product. And the banker would say something like, well, that's not really what's important here. And women would be like, no, I'll tell you what's important to me, and I need you to listen to that. So generally speaking, women, American Airlines had a website for women, which actually had some good information on it, some good content on it, and about smart ways to pack, better ways to travel, what to look for, etc. Unfortunately, at the last minute, somebody, not the manager of the project, but somebody at the website design company decided to, I can't even imagine this, change the palette of that particular website for women to be a more feminine friendly palette, which meant that when women went on the palette, they found themselves in a world of pink, and they were furious. So even though the content was good, painting something pink can really backfire on you unless there is an absolute reason why, a functional reason to have gender different products. I would recommend against it.
Very true, Marty. And that, as you were
I lost
so
you.
as you were speaking,
Okay.
yes, Marty. As you were speaking about it, I was just thinking of a very recent example in India, in Gurgaon, the city where I used to live. Uh, One fine day, I saw these auto rickshaws, the three-wheelers. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Suddenly, they were all painted pink outside the metro station, and I couldn't figure out as to why they would do that. Uh, of course, they wanted to communicate this whole aspect of safety. It's only for women, for the auto, but it was driven by a man still. And I was like, I mean, how does that make it any safe? Just by painting it pink doesn't make it any safer. And that's what happened after a couple of months.
Were they screened? Were the drivers screened for, I don't
No,
know?
it was just the autos were painted pink. That's all.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
couple of months down the line,
Yeah.
they're possibly carrying more men than women in that auto, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just possibly the point that you mentioned. That's more gimmickry than real value, taking into account the sensibilities that you mentioned about Marty. So this question is another interesting one. Parthiv wants to know that can you, from your experience, share some examples of brands or businesses who were earlier focusing on men as a target audience for communication, but they transitioned to include women prominently, and that really turned out very well for the brand. So, is there a case study that you have in mind that you want to share with our audience?
Oh, Rakesh, if I had a good memory, I know that there are companies that have done this, and largely it's been in the way they've reached out in their communication. So Samsung, I know, did a lot of shifting its brand attitude towards women about, I'm guessing 6 or 7 years ago. It had been assumed up until then that because big screen TVs were an electronic product, which is technical, that men were the primary buyers. And so they would talk about the technical features, which men were interested in. And they would talk about our engineers and kind of the German auto of focus, which is very engineering driven and very about the mechanics and our drivetrain and our, I don't know, carburetors or something. And men tend to be more interested in that than women. But here's an interesting, electronics in general as a category. There was a fascinating study done by Best Buy. I don't know if you have Best Buy Electronics, a huge chain here in the United States. And Best Buy started as an electronics store, which carried not only the small electronics like computers and smartphones, but also large appliances, washing machines, and dishwashers, that sort of thing, and ended up expanding a little bit beyond that to carrying music CDs back when there were CDs, etc. And what Best Buy did is they were wondering whether women were the primary shopper, or whether women were a big factor in their shopper audience as well. And so they did a very smart thing. They went into their stores. So they did some observational research, and they went into their stores, and sure enough, their stores had more men in them than women. And some companies would have stopped with that observation and thought, yeah, you know what? Men are more technical. They're more interested in technical stuff. So yeah, we're doing the right thing to market to men. But then somebody had the idea to look at who was standing in the cash register lines. And guess what? There were more women than men standing in the cash register lines. Well, what was the conclusion from that? What they figured out was that men, being so interested in electronics, love to come into, they would come into Best Buy the way women go to, what should I say, a shoe store maybe. They would come to see what was new. Because things change so fast in technology products, right? So they'd come to see the newest computer, the newest laptop, the newest smartphone, etc. But it was more just to stay abreast of what was going on. They weren't necessarily, women didn't come into those stores unless they were looking to buy something, right? When they needed a new computer, they came in and they bought one. When they needed a new smartphone or washing machine, etc. So this was a huge insight for Best Buy. And what it taught them is they needed to think about presenting those products in the context of how women considered the purchase. So men responded well to all the technical specs, and they knew the gigahertz and megabytes or whatever. You can tell how interested I am in technology. And they, but women were interested in the whole family can stay home for entertainment instead of going out to the movies. You can, oh, I don't know what else. Smartphones. You can do social media. You can stay in touch with your friends, and at the same time, you can share what you're shopping for. So the way that it was presented was in terms of the things that motivated women to buy, instead of focusing on the things that men were interested in. The moral of this story actually applies to a couple of different categories, not just electronics. Same thing with cars. Toyota Camrys used to be, I'm not sure, the last time I was working in the automotive category was a few years ago, used to be the #1 make and model sold in the United States. And that sedan was bought, the majority of that particular make and model was bought by women. And I think that people assume that because men are more interested in a category and talk more about it, that obviously they must be the primary buyers. And that's not the case. It's just not. It's very important to go deeper than that. It's very important to actually test that assumption and to think about it, and then to look to look deeper at what it is that motivates women to buy. In technology products, for example, women will almost never be in the wave of early adopters. You won't see women standing out, queuing up outside the store. You will see women, but you won't see a lot of women queuing up for the new iPhone model, right? Men like to be the first to have it because it's a little competitive thing. Hey, I got one of the first ones, that new iPhone, what is it, 12 now or something. I got one of the first ones. Let me show you what's cool about this model. All right. It's a little bit, men view the world in a little bit more competitive fashion with each other. Women don't see it that way usually as much. So women prefer on technology products to wait until somebody's got the bugs out. I know it will work, and I don't have to deal with the technical stuff that I'm not interested in. And so generally, once it becomes third generation, fourth generation, that sort of thing, at that point, women become the primary buyers because they start buying the smartphones for the kids. They buy the third round of new computers for the kids. They buy the cameras. Well, before we had cameras in the smartphones for the kids, right? And so it's important to stay aware of those different dynamics and what's going on with the early adopters. Just because women aren't the early adopters or the ones who talk the most about it doesn't mean that they're not the primary buyers in the category. A little bit of an indirect answer, but I hope it answers the question.
Yes, it did, Marty. Thank you so much. I think that's all the time we have. I think we overshot the time by good 40 minutes, but how I wish that we could have continued for longer, Marty. It was such a pleasure listening to you.
It's
I
really fun.
thoroughly
It's
enjoyed
fun
it.
to talk with you.
It was our pleasure. I'm sure the audience out there enjoyed it as much as I did listening to you, Marty. Great insights, very, very fresh perspective, very good perspective, deep perspective about how to market to women and how to avoid making some of those stereotypical mistakes that we end up making when we talk about marketing to women specifically. So it's not all about color, paint, but there's a lot more deeper meaning to it, and that's what we take away from this session today, Marty. Thank you so much for being with us. It was
My
an absolute
pleasure,
pleasure
Akash.
to have you.
My pleasure. And goodbye to everybody who watched. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your questions too. Fun questions. Great questions.
Thank you, Marty. Wish you all the
Okay.
best. Stay safe.
Okay, you too. Stay safe, everybody.
Okay, that's brings us to the end of the show. Once again, regret the inconvenience that was caused in the middle of the session. But I hope you enjoyed what Marty had to present today. I think there was genuine content there. Like I said, if you want to go back to the presentation, lots of data perspective that you can catch again in case you missed any part of the presentation. But thank you very much for joining us today. The two lucky winners for today are Raman Kapoor. I think we asked only 3 questions. My apologies that we couldn't ask all the questions. Given the time we had, Raman Kapoor and Parthiv Agarwal, congratulations for your questions. Please send us your email ID so we can ship the vouchers to you. And big thank you to our community support partner, Resultex, AdGully, Paul Reiter, and Shumini University for being with us, supporting this initiative. Thank you very much. Next session we have is on 4th November, 6:30 with Sally Haldison. Do tune in. Don't forget to tune in to Master Speak on 4th November, 6:30 p.m. Thank you very much. Stay safe, stay healthy, everyone.